everyone, I'm Rebecca and welcome back to my sewing room. Today I am going to be making an 18th century market bonnet. So that is the type of bonnet where it looks kind of like poofy in the back but then still has a brim around the face like this. I'll just put up an example right here so you know what I'm talking about. And this is actually a brand new pattern that I am pattern testing for Penny River and Goodwives linens. So hopefully everything goes well with this pattern. I have a pretty good faith in these people for making a good pattern. So yeah, hopefully everything goes well, especially because I've never made a market bonnet before. But if you are seeing this video, it means that the pattern is released because we were asked to hold back sharing stuff like this until the pattern was released. So I will leave a link down in the description below so that you can go get this pattern for yourself and check it out. But I am very, very excited to make this. I have actually had a market bonnet on my to-do list for a significantly long time. So when this pattern test came up, I jumped at the chance because I really wanted to make one. Now that said, market bonnets, the most common color and fabric for them was actually black silk taffeta. I have not in any of this time that I've been wanting to make a market bonnet actually acquired black silk taffeta. So that is not what I'm going to be using today, but I wanted to go with another neutral, and I have heard that like white and ivory silk taffeta was also a thing for market bonnets. So this is the fabric that I'm going to be using. It's like just off-white basically. I forget what this is left over from, but I have, I think, about a yard of it, which is good because 1 yard is what is required. So hopefully that will be enough. And then the caul, as in like the puffy back part of the bonnet, is meant to be lined. And I'm hoping that I will actually have enough of this linen fabric that I can actually line it with linen. If not, I will just be lining it with regular cotton. But yeah, hopefully this will work. I have literally just printed out the pattern. It is sitting in my printer tray. So since this is a digital pattern, I have to go tape all of the pieces together and cut them out. And then we can go ahead and cut out the pieces. But I'm going to take you with me as I go through all of the steps of this pattern. And unusually for my channel, normally I very much go off pattern, but when you're doing a pattern test, you obviously can't do that. And the nice thing about a bonnet is like you don't have to fit it either, so I don't need to go off pattern in any way. So I'll be following every single step in this pattern, and again, I will be taking you along with me. So I'm gonna go cut everything out, and then I will meet back up with you and show you the next step. So that's really obnoxious. I just got this caul piece cut out and went to go press it, and my iron for some reason was wet on the bottom and just like spit all of this water all over. I think you can hopefully see those off-color spots. Yeah, that's like brown water that it spit all over my fabric. So of course I had already folded up the rest of the fabric. Hopefully I have enough to cut another caul out of it. But like, what the heck, iron? That is so not cool. Crisis averted. I had enough fabric for one more piece, so that has been cut out. I now have all of the pieces cut out. I was able to do the linen for the lining of the caul. I had just enough, and now we can go ahead and start the assembly. I do not have yet cut out this piece right here, which is the brim stiffening. So I'm hoping this isn't the first step. I haven't actually read the steps yet, but this is supposed to be like paperboard or stiff material. They recommend like some sort of stiff plastic that you can get from Joann's, I guess, but I don't have that yet. So I have just returned from Joann's where I bought this heavy duty template plastic, which was in like the quilting notions section. So this is the label so you can see it. And I went with this heavy duty instead of the light ones, even though this was more expensive because this just seemed more worthy of a brim to me. So I have just cut out the brim piece. You can see like how stiff that is there. So hopefully that will work. And now it is time to actually put everything all together. So I think I'm going to do the non-historical method, as in the method that utilizes the sewing machine kind of as much as possible. I am just in the process of reading through the instructions, and basically the other method is entirely hand sewn versus not hand sewn. Ideally, I would like to finish this in the next 2 hours because I was actually meant to finish this a couple of days ago and did not. So yeah, I'd really like to get this done now. I think I'm supposed to finish pattern testing this in like the next 2 days. It is Valentine's Day right now, and I want to say the deadline for this was like the 16th or 17th to provide feedback, so I need to finish it soon, but I would like to finish it even sooner than that, and that way I can get on to my Barbie sewing because I need to do that as well. So yeah, I'm gonna put this together the machine sewing method and go as quickly as possible, and I will walk you through that method. So the first step is to baste around the 2 caul pieces, the poofy part, with the wrong sides together, which I was not reading right at first, but so like the insides just don't matter. I mean, these are both double-sided fabrics, so it really doesn't matter. But yeah, it says to baste around. However, it doesn't say if I'm basting down here as well, or if I am just leaving that, because like the next step is that this gets turned up to form a casing, but it just doesn't say anything about basting it. I think I'm going to go ahead and baste it, and I can always take those basting stitches out since it doesn't specify. Okay, I've reached the next confusion, which is that the pattern says to like fold on the fold lines. It doesn't mention if these are both fold lines, but if this bottom one is a fold line, like I don't think I can fold less than 1/8 of an inch up and actually have it like press in place. I don't think that's a thing. So I'm not really sure how that works, if that's supposed to be like by the time it gets to here it's twice folded. But I do know that this is an eyelet that I have to make. I'm planning on doing this bit by hand since it's just one, and I feel like if I try to do silk on there it's just gonna kind of like pull all the fibers and everything, and yeah. Also I feel like if I was gonna do this kind of non-historical method anyway, honestly, in hindsight, this basting, I feel like I should have serged around the edges. I don't know what's going to happen as far as finishing goes for that, but I hope there's something that will finish it, because otherwise I've got raw edges that are going to like fray all over. So yeah, you can see it's already fraying a lot down here. So now I need to figure out this whole casing situation, because like I can't fold a fold that tiny. It's just not a thing. And then I fold it up again. But first I make the eyelet before I fold it the second time. So I'm just going to make the eyelet now because that makes more sense to me, and then attempt the folds and see where we land. So just my opinion, but if you're making this out of silk, which is kind of the recommended, this eyelet's way too close to the edge. I think you can see here where I have inserted the awl and it's just like pulled all the fibers completely away from the edge. So now that fold is even worse. I kind of feel like I shouldn't even do this eyelet. Like I should try to get the fibers back where they need to go, because that's kind of awful. So yeah, I've attempted to move my eyelet a little farther from the edge. I think you can see now I folded up 1/4 inch, and that would have been like right where that eyelet already was. And then I just went ahead and folded it the rest, which was like probably about 1/2 inch, and then stuck an eyelet in the middle of that. So now I'm gonna sew that. And then I think the next step is whip stitching this down, since I can't really do that by machine. Oh, I should also add that if you're a visual learner, this is not the pattern for you. There are literally no pictures in these instructions. I'm definitely a visual person. I usually don't even read the text. Obviously, for a pattern test, I have to read the text. But this is not how my brain works. Okay, I take that back. I was looking at the first draft of instructions. These are the second draft of instructions. So obviously we do actually have some visuals, and I'm going to work with this one now because this is going to be way easier for my brain. So now that this has all been whipped down and the eyelet is complete, it is time to thread a drawstring in through this casing. And they basically have you start at one end, go all the way through, create a little loop out through the eyelet, then go the rest of the way through, secure the ends, and then cut it in two. I'm not really sure why they don't have you just do 2 threadings worth. I honestly have no idea, but here is the issue. So they recommend or call for a 1/8 inch tape. This is a 1/8 inch tape, but I need 24 inches and this is 18 inches, so that's not going to work. So we have 2 other options. One is this like thick string. I'm not really sure what exactly this is or how it wound up in my stash, but it's like a thick string. And then we also have just like cotton yarn. I feel like the cotton yarn looks a little homespun, whereas like the string looks slightly nicer. So I think I'm gonna go with the string route, It's really a shame that I don't have enough of this tape though, or that I, didn't know that I needed it when I went to Joann's earlier today. That's what happens when you don't actually fully read the pattern instructions. So I'm gonna go with this and hopefully it will work. And I'm threading this through with a bodkin. If you do not have a bodkin, highly recommend you get one. I'll try to link one in the description that is just like this because I love this one. But basically it's nubby on one end, has a really, really large eye on the other end, and you can very easily go into a channel and go all the way through. I also love that this one's so long, so it like goes through really quickly. We can get it through the eye and come out. I always like to try and secure this other end if you can whenever you're going through a drawstring casing, just because you don't want to lose this end after like the work you've done. So I'm going to try and safety pin that to this. In fact, actually I'm just going to straight pin it since I don't really have to use this end anymore and this is so thin. So we're going to just straight pin that so we don't lose it. And then back through. And actually I'm going to switch my bodkin out for a yarn needle for the rest of this because although the bodkin came out of the tiny eyelet that I made, it doesn't want to go back in with that nubby end. So we're going to do a yarn needle instead, which we have to take a little slower, but it still works great. Yarn needles also work really nicely for like lacing your stays, so highly recommend. And here we are out the other end. And now we just need to secure these ends in place. Oh, also, I think I was meant to like keep a loop of this out. See, okay, so this is just me, but if I was writing these instructions, I would say just go all the way through the channel and then just like take a pin or whatever and then like pull it up this way. I'm not gonna do it right now because my ends aren't secured, but like, yeah, then I wouldn't have had the bodkin issue through the eyelet. I mean, if we're not going to cut this in two, we don't need to go through this eyelet. We can just loop it out ourselves. That's just my 2 cents. So I'm going to secure these ends now and then I will just pull it up through the eyelet. My little loop pulled up here in the center. I'm honestly just going to wait until the end to cut this because there's no reason that I need to cut it right now. So now I think we move on to the brim. Next up is to place the brim stiffening, the like plastic piece here, onto one of the pieces of the outer brim, and you want to mark this on like the wrong side of the piece. Again, my fabric is double-sided, so I have marked this pink line along the edge. That's going to be our stitch line, and so now we're going to put right sides together of this and the other outer brim piece, and then sew along that line via the machine, clip all of the curves, and turn that right side out. By the way, I just wanted to do a quick test to see if this is ironable. As you can tell, it's not. So my test was that I wrapped it in a little scrap of silk here, just like scrap pieces, and just ironed on here. And I'm on a wool setting right now, so I'm not even super, super hot on the iron. Yeah, that does not work at all. So if you do buy this plastic stuff, do not try to iron it. So because I know that I'm not going to be able to press it once the plastic is inside, I'm doing one extra step in my like turning of this. I clipped all of my curve, like I think I mentioned I was going to do, like it says in the pattern, but then I pressed it on the edge of my pressing ham. I pressed it open. Now I'm going to turn it and press it flat along the edge, and then the plastic gets inserted. So just wanted to share a little trick here on the brim. After you turn it right sides out, you put the plastic or whatever you're using inside, and you do have to be kind of careful about like which side your seam allowance gets folded down into, because you don't want it to like go wonky on both sides, if that makes sense. So I put all of my seam allowance on one side, the side that's facing you right now, and you can still kind of see it through because I'm using white, but yeah. Then I clipped everything in place, and that way I could just kind of smooth everything out to the raw edge here, because the next step is to baste along this edge. Now I found that I couldn't personally just like put this under the machine without marking that line to see like where the plastic was and where the plastic wasn't, so that I didn't sew through the plastic. So what I wound up doing was, once I had the clips in, I just kind of took this in my hand and like smoothed it over the edge like this, and then took my friction pen and just really, really lightly, because I use the friction highlighters, really lightly just made a mark right on the edge right there. And then I did my machine basting, and then I ironed it off, but you have to be really careful because you can't actually iron the plastic. So basically I ironed it like this, so it was like just touching that edge barely, and that worked. It got all the friction off. So now I think we are at the point of connecting the caul to the brim. So I'm going to look at those instructions, but I think basically I take the caul portion and I pleat up where I made like all of these little lines. You can gather it too, I believe, but I'm going to try the box pleating because that's what they suggested. So I'm going to make all these little box pleats, and I guess that should fit it to the brim. So I know that I folded this bottom casing up about 1/8 of an inch more than it said in the pattern, or probably said in the pattern, but like this pleated part here does not remotely fit this brim. So that is a problem. I don't know if it's a matter of like this would fit if I used the historical method sewing, because I forget if I mentioned it, but there's the historical method that's like all hand sewn, and then there's the modern method that is mostly machine sewn. I'm doing mostly modern, but yeah, this is 1 inch. Like, yeah, it's really, really far off. So I guess I'm just gonna have to space out my pleats. I marked all of my pleats. They're exactly pleated where they should be. I'm glad I didn't baste them in yet because this won't work. But literally, this is how far off it is if I were to keep the pleat marks where they're supposed to be. Well, I now have a market bonnet-ish. I mean, it's not done at all. So if I had read all the way to the end of the instructions before starting, it says at this point that you can now, for the modern method, like finish off the inside here however you kind of want. You can pink the edges, you can serge the edges, or you can bind it, because obviously this is really ugly in there right now. Of course, if I had wanted serged edges, that should have been done like first. Like, it should have been flat-lined with the serger, like I said from the get-go. So that definitely should be earlier in the instructions, and I'm going to recommend that they change that if it's not too late. And likewise, like when basting the brim, that would be when to serge it, because granted, I can release the drawstring and get this flatter, but it is not flat. And also, if you serge something, the very last thing, if you ever need to redo it, you basically can't, because picking out serging is extremely obnoxious. So that's annoying. And now I'm left with a really, really ugly finish inside, and I'm going to have to bind it because it's hideous. So I am going to find some binding. I don't know if I'm going to do self-binding with the ivory or just like random, you know, pre-made binding, something like that probably, because I can't really be bothered with making silk binding. And then it's time to decorate this however I want, and I have no idea how I want to decorate it. So I guess it's probably good that I'm pretty much out of sewing time today. I might have time to start on the binding here before I go to bed, but I definitely can't do any decorating, and I'm not sure how much decorating I want to do. So Noelle just, I think today, released a video. She made this as well for the pattern test, and she did these cute little puffs around. I was kind of thinking just like a bow, like that would be cute. And I don't know if I want it like out of the same fabric, or if I want like a contrast bow, if I want to just do it out of ribbon or what. But yeah, I feel like that might need to wait until I see what I'm gonna wear it with, because at this point I have no idea what I'm wearing it with. So I don't know if I'll be decorating it or not. I do like the puffs, we'll see. And I think there are some like decoration suggestions within the pattern, so I guess maybe if I scroll to the next page it will talk about that. I know you're probably saying, Rebecca, why don't you read the entire pattern before you start? And that is because if I do that, 0% of it will process. I am not a reader when it comes to patterns. Like I mentioned before, I normally just don't even follow the directions at all. And so like if I read a whole lot of instructions all in one list, 0% processes. I have to do it while I'm reading it for it to process. There's probably several of you at least out there who are like me, but yeah, I have to like, it helps a little if I'm seeing it done or if there's pictures with it, like that'll help a little, but it won't actually process until I'm physically doing it. I think that means I'm a kinesthetic learner. So anyway, not sure how I want to decorate it, but I feel like it kind of looks like 18th century chef's hat right now, which I'm not necessarily mad about. It is definitely very bright, but it's pretty cute. So I'm gonna put some binding on the inside, and then I guess we'll go from there about decorations. The binding is now all complete, so the inside looks nice and tidy, and now we can go ahead and look at decorations for the outside. So I was looking at the recommendations for decorations that they list in the pattern instructions, and they have a few. They do mention that typically bonnets like this were actually decorated with like the same fabric, or at least like the same color fabric, as opposed to a contrasting fabric being made into, you know, the bows and furbelows and whatever. And so the common ones that they say, the very most common is like a series of puffs around the brim, which is what Noelle I think did with hers. Another common one would be like multiple bows kind of going around, or you could do a combination of all of that with like puffs and bows, or even you could do where it's just kind of like a flat ribbon with a bow right up here in the top. So I think what I'm gonna do is I am going to cut some strips of the ivory silk taffeta and probably just cut them like with my pinking rotary blade, because they do say that typically they were pinked on the edges, which is very, very common for 18th century, which means the little zigzags like you probably saw on my Felicity outfit. And I think, yeah, I'm just gonna like cut some strips and then just play with them and see what they want to do. So I'll probably cut strips that are about like this wide. I don't know, that looks pretty good. And maybe tie them up into puffs or tie them into bows, or I don't know, I'll just kind of see what I like best. So I'm kind of liking the ridiculousness of a bow that is this large. Right now this is just a single layer bow. It wasn't quite a long enough strip to create a double layer, so I am thinking about possibly doing another layer behind it just to make it even more full. And then I'm gonna do, I think, the little poofs around. I still have to experiment with that, but this is a 4-inch wide piece that is the width of the caul across, because this was from the splattered caul piece. So I'm gonna see like how many of these puffs and stuff I can get out of the caul so that I don't waste fabric without, you know, running into the splattered section. Though, to be honest, like I don't even know how obvious the splattering would be if it's all like puffed up. So I don't know, but that doesn't start till up here, so I still have a little width before the splattering starts. But yeah, I'm gonna try some puff decorations and see how that looks with the bow. I've done a little rough approximation here using quilting clips just so that you can get kind of an idea of what the puffs look like. I think I probably want to make them slightly closer together. Like, I completely did not measure these, so some of these are really quite long, but I think this piece will actually work to get around, so hopefully. And now I'm gonna go take the clips off, measure them, and I will hand sew each little intersection, just like whipping it around so that it gathers it up, and then I can sew the puffs to the bonnet. All of the puffs are on. I actually wound up having to extend my row here by just a little bit, so these last two puffs were part of a different strip, but I think I blended them pretty well. And I sewed the intersections first, so it was all a strip, then I sewed each intersection to the hat. So now it is time to add the bow, and then it will be done. And here is the finished bonnet. So I really like this giant bow that I did here. This was just that folded bow that I showed you before, and then this is like one additional strip that's again 4 inches wide, pinked on the edges, and I kind of like cut the ends at an angle so it would kind of look a little more bow-like. It's a little on the huge side, but like I'm here for it. And let's face it, this era was all about over-the-top ridiculousness, especially when it came to hair and headwear. So I think that that's going to be super, super cute. Obviously it doesn't look great with my like modern hair here, but unfortunately I am not going to be dressing up in any 18th century stuff for the end of this video. So this is what you get, end of the day makeup with my just, you know, frizzy hair. But yeah, I'm really, really happy with this. I kind of love that it's white because I feel like it'll go with a lot. I mean, so would black, but like you can see all the details too, which I think is really helpful. So yeah, we've got all of our puffs around here, and then the giant bow, more puffs, and here is where it is drawn up in the back with a little cord. I don't know if they normally like tucked the cord up or what. Kind of makes me feel like I should have used ribbon. Not that I had 1/8 inch wide ribbon either, but I feel like then it at least would look pretty. So I don't know, but it's really, really cute, and I'm excited to incorporate this into my 18th century wardrobe. Overall, this was a pretty darn quick project. I mean, I spent a couple of hours today doing the embellishments, and that's really just because everything was hand sewn, so it took, you know, I don't even think it's actually a couple of hours. I think it was 1 hour looking at what I've watched on YouTube. So yeah, that's really not bad to do 1 hour's worth of embellishments. And then yesterday, I think I really only spent about 2 hours, and then I had cut out the pieces before then. So that's not bad. I mean, like for a 3-4 hour project, I think that that is pretty darn good. So I definitely recommend checking out this pattern. As of the day that I'm filming this, it is still on pre-order. So I'm not sure exactly when it is like going to be released. Obviously they have to take feedback from those of us who are pattern testing it. So as you have seen in this video, there is some feedback that I'm going to be providing to them. But overall, I think that this is a really, really successful pattern. And I also kind of love that if you undo the drawstring, this packs basically flat. So like, this is a good one for a suitcase. Having the plastic brim in there, I think will make it really sturdy. Like paper, if you had done the paper route, that could potentially bend, like crease. So that's why I went with the plastic route, and I think that it worked super, super well. Like I'm gonna have to remember this potentially for other hat making. Unfortunately, it comes in relatively small sheets, but I think that that is really pretty cool. So yeah, super, super happy with this project. Hopefully you have enjoyed this video. If you like this video, please go ahead and click the thumbs up icon. And if you'd like to see more videos like this from me, please go ahead and click subscribe and the little bell icon to be notified every time I post a new video. I do post videos here on YouTube twice a week, with my sewing vlogs out on Tuesdays and other random costuming content like this out on Saturdays, but I post every day over on my Instagram, so please go follow me on Instagram. That's at Lady Rebecca Fashions. And if you'd like to help support all of the work that I do on this channel, I do have a link to my Patreon and my Ko-fi down in the description below, or you can send me a super thanks right here on YouTube. I'd also like to give a special shout out to my Edwardian level patrons, Sharon, Mirage, Laura, and Jean. Thank you all so, so much for joining me today. I hope you all have a wonderful week, and I will see you very soon in my next video. Happy sewing!